And we are live. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. It's the pre-show for our 221001 Core 1 A+ study group. We've got plenty to do today. I need to figure out how I can pop open the new chat. We're working with the YouTube chat today, so we're going to see how this goes. Get that there. There's the chat. Hi, everybody. That's a difficult thing to work with. I'm going to have to bring this over a little bit. There we go. See? That works a little better. Hi, everybody. This is the pre-show, so we haven't started yet. So for those of you watching the replay, it gets better than this, I promise. We'll get things going. Does this work? Yes. We've got recordings going. Let me check these recordings. Make sure recordings are good. Yep, I need to make sure the recording is going in the other room. That's this right here. That's the streaming box. That's actually in the other room. That's the video from that device. So the streaming is working quite nicely. That looks very good. YouTube tells me the streaming is working nicely, so that's good. Got lots of folks here in the chat room. Welcome, everybody. Everyone from D.C. to Orlando to Crystal Park, Ohio. Michigan, welcome. Cleveland, Ohio. Ohio's checking in heavy. Virginia, as usual, thanks for being here. Nigeria, welcome. Garland, Texas. Tampa, Florida. Miami, Florida. We had Orlando, Florida. Us Floridians are pretty happy this week. It's a little better week than it was last week. Last week was a little intense, a little bit nervous. Anxiety levels were high. Indiana's here. Virginia again. New York, or at least New York. I don't know if it's New York, but it's in New York. Dallas, welcome. California, Atlanta. Tampa again, welcome. Connecticut, New York again. Lantana, yes, the storm is indeed gone. We missed a good chunk of it. There was a little bit of damage here in Florida, but nothing like they got elsewhere. So we got lucky on that one. Texarkana, checking in. Georgia. Atlanta is here. New York City. Welcome from the Caribbean. Hope you folks are okay there. Gainesville is here. Look at all these Florida folks checking in. Fort Walton Beach, welcome. Aruba, the Bronx. There's my Canada people in Ontario. Welcome. Mrs. Professor Messer will be glad you made it with her Canadian self. Maryland is checking in. Charlotte, North Carolina. That was more Alabama than it was North Carolina. Asheville is here. Calgary, see, there's Canada. They're checking in. Sweetwater, Florida, Miami, Florida, Austin, Kentucky. A lot of folks in from Florida. Orlando again. I was in Orlando this weekend. Got a lot going on. Gosh, Fort Walton Beach there as well. 2 from Fort Walton Beach. How'd that happen? Lots of Atlanta checking in. Welcome. Nolans is here. We've got... well, let's not have a barbecue fight in the chat room before we even get started. We will be getting started, by the way, in about 7 minutes, less than 6.5 minutes, 6 minutes or so, and get things going. We've got questions for you in this first hour. We've got answers in the second hour. For those of you that have joined us before, we were using a different chat before. Now we're in, it's a YouTube chat. It's the one that is integrated into YouTube. So hopefully this will be something that will work well for everybody. We're going to try this. We're going to see how it goes. And if it works, we'll just keep using it. If it doesn't, then we perhaps won't use it so much. Knoxville's here. St. Pete. Phoenix is here. Cleveland again. Memphis. Argentina, welcome. You just moved here from Winter Park. I just spent the weekend in Winter Park. See how that works? How does that work? What happened there? San Antonio, Central Minnesota. This is not Security Plus. Today's group is the A+ study group for the 221001 A+. So this will be something different. The chat is not a new feature. The chat's always been on my website at the live link at professormesser.com/live. There's our note saying we have 5 minutes. ProfessorMesser.com/live has always been working for us with a chat, but YouTube did not have a chat. So now we're finally integrating in the YouTube chat with the chat on my site. We're going to see how this works. I think it's going to work pretty well. I'm hoping that it works pretty well. Really don't know what I think. We're going to find out. Let's have a look at Keynote. Let's get up our slides so you can get the questions today. We got a green light. Green light, green light. Where's my green light? It's right there. There we go. Green light. We can go ahead and get that ready. Let's check. I'm going to check some of the cameras on my side. You kind of see things flicking around on the screen. See that little thing that's going on over there? That's me checking cameras. That's all good. That's good. That's good. Okay. I think we're pretty good. DYL passed your 1002 yesterday morning. A+ certified now. Congratulations. Congratulations. That's a good feeling. Kind of nice getting that all done. You went for your exam on a Monday morning. Is there extra credit there? I think there is. I think that's a little bonus. But you did get kind of crammed all weekend, right? And then boom, you take it first thing Monday before you have a chance to forget everything. So that kind of works. That works pretty well if you can work it that way. We have about 3.5 minutes left before we get started. Hang in there, everybody. Thanks for being here and in the chat. We've got all A+ questions for you this morning. In the first hour, I will be asking you questions. And in the second hour, I open up the phone lines and you ask me questions. So we turn it around in that second hour. I'll open up phone lines. I'll take questions from the chat room, those types of things. We'll see what happens. We never know what's going to happen that second hour. The first hour, I know what's going to happen. I wrote the questions. It's the second hour, I'm never quite sure exactly what's going to go on, which is fine, I think. I think that's fine. I think that's good. Okay. Wonder if I should move some of these windows over. I'm going to move this one over. There we go. So I can see what's going on the link. Can I get stream health? There we go. Yeah, we'll just leave it there. That way I can keep track. YouTube has this whole new interface they use for their streaming and their videos these days, so I'm trying to get accustomed to it. Is it working? It is working. Am I accustomed to it? No. Always have to wonder where the links are now. That's the big challenge. Welcome, Vegas. We've got plenty of questions today. These are all A+ Core 1. 221,001 questions today. So that's what we're working on is the 1001. And we will get through a good chunk of those in this first hour. We get through an hour's worth of those questions. There's already a question up at professormesser.com/QA. We'll talk about that in a moment. Make sure you're able to get in to see the questions. So for those of you here early, you can pop open a new browser window and browse over to the professormesser.com/QA, and you'll see a question there, and you see how that works. Already questions, how much different is the 901 and 1001? I'm glad you asked because we are going to look at that today. I'll show you exactly on something new I created for the objectives. We'll put that in here so I can show you. We've got... What else? I think we've got ready to go. We've got recordings, 2 recordings here. Are they recording down here? Yep, there's the Cylons. Recording up here and recording on YouTube. So we're good to go. YouTube tells me my connection is excellent. We will see. What exactly is excellent about it? Okay. Let's see. We're good. All right. We might as well get some things started here in a few minutes or a few seconds. Not a few minutes. We're ready. This looks good here. Can almost see everything in front of me. We've got everyone here in the chat room ready to go. I think we're in pretty good shape. So I think it's time. Kind of got things started. Let's see how we do now. We good? I think we are. And there's my watch. It says, let's do something here. And I couldn't agree more. Here we go, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the September 2019 Professor Messer A+ study group. This study group is the 220-1001, or what is also known as the Core 1 A+ exam study group. We're going to go through questions really for the next hour. I will ask you questions, and then you will answer these questions online. If you're watching this live, you can participate with us and answer the questions interactively. I'll tell you how to do all of that in just a moment. I also will turn this around for the second hour. I'll open up the phone lines. I'll take questions from the chat room. And you can, of course, comment in, ask questions of me, and see if there's anything that maybe you would like to know. So that might be useful to have there as well. If you don't want to answer interactively online, or you're watching us on a replay, please stay tuned. You can, of course, follow along with us and answer along with everyone else. We just won't see your answer. One of those situations. We have plenty to go through today. I am going to show you some of the things we're going to do. This study group is brought to you thanks to you. You are the ones who help support what we do here by watching all of our videos. Of course, all of my training classes are available for you to watch online for free every minute of every video. They're not behind a paywall. They're not hidden somewhere else. They're not secret links you get when you register. And you don't have to do any of those things. You just connect to my site or go to YouTube and you can watch everything. We have A+ pop quiz questions every day on Twitter. Go to professormesser.com/Twitter. Don't forget the professormesser.com/YouTube is where you can go to subscribe, to like the videos, and do all of those things. I tried to disable the dislike button. It didn't work. The dislike button works too. So you can do either one of those. You can find out more about the offline version of these courses at professormesser.com/1000 videos, 1000 videos, because there is more than one. There are multiple of the videos. Sometime during this first hour, I will give you some instructions on how you can earn a continuing education unit credit. I've sent all of my certifications out, except for one or two that came in yesterday. So if you haven't gotten yours, you may want to check your spam filter. Maybe they got stuck in a folder somewhere, like for spam, or you may just want to send it again, or send me an email and see if I got the first one. I'll give you specific instructions on how you do that during this first hour. Be sure to listen in, because if you do not follow those instructions, you don't get a certification email that I have digitally signed. So make sure you're aware of that to get that. There's a lot we're going to talk about today with the A+ exams. The current A+ exams are called the 220-1001 and the 220-1002. These are two exams that were introduced and released in January of this year. Now, the older exams, the 900 series, really just phased out on July 31st. So if you have study materials that say 220-901 or 220-902, I would recommend you get newer study materials. Do not use older study materials to study for this exam, and I'll show you why in just a moment. The requirements for the exam, though, are exactly the same as the 900 series. So if you're already familiar with how the 900 series exams went, it's exactly the same for the 1000 series. There's two exams. The first exam, you need to get a 675 on a scale from 100 to 900, and for the 220-1002, you need a 700 also on that scale between 100 and 900. Now, not much has changed. If you were studying for the 900 series and now you're back to really update yourself and you realize, wait, the 900 series isn't here anymore, it's the 1000 series. Now what do we do? Are there new topics? Yes, there are. And for both of these, there are about 20% new topics. So brand new things that you need to know about on the exam. Overall, 20%, not a lot. So you don't lose a lot of the studies that you've already done, but it's enough to make a really big difference on your exam. And that's why I tell people, make sure that you have the latest exam objectives. That's going to be pretty important. One of the things you can do is go to professormesser.com/objectives. That will take you to my website, and it will bring up a screen like this. Here's the objective website. You can click the big link at the top to go to the CompTIA site to download the exam objectives. But you can see that there are two links here that show what is different between the 220-1001 and the 220-901, and what's different between the 220-1002 and the 220-902. So if we click one of those, it will bring up a page that highlights the differences. So these are all of the objectives for the 901 exam. And as I scroll through here, anytime you see that yellow highlighting on the screen, that's what's new. So you can see not a lot. There's big chunks of this that are new, but a lot of this is some of the older 900 series content because those things don't change. The wireless standards don't change between this exam and the previous one, but knowing things like syslog or an endpoint management server or VPNs and NATs and all of these other types of topics that are in yellow, those are new on this exam. So if you were studying for the 900 exam and you're trying to figure out what should I study for this exam, that's what you should study. Some folks wanted to have that information, wanted to know those things. That's where it's available at professormesser.com/objectives. You can go there to see that. If that link takes you over to CompTIA site automatically, then you'll need to clear out your cache in your browser to be able to get there. So that's one thing that we'll talk about as we go through these questions, are all of these topics, and you need to know those topics. This is for the 220-1001 exam. Today we'll talk about mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and hardware and network troubleshooting. We'll try to focus on those topics. You can show up on 2 days from now on Thursday. We're doing another live study group for the 220-1002 or the Core 2 exam. So those are ones that will come in handy when we start stepping through all of this. Now, I have quite a bit of things to go through. All of my courses are available on my site. You can also download those. We've already talked a little bit about that. So I'm going to jump over here and tell you how you can get the replay of this study group in an audio-only form. The podcast form is available at professormesser.com/podcast, where you can download and have automatically downloaded into your podcast listening program our A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus study groups, or you can listen on that page. And of course, video replays are always available on the Professor Messer website. By the time you will see this tomorrow, there will also be on YouTube a set of timestamps. So if you're somebody that likes to jump around to find exactly what you're looking for in the replay, my marketing manager, Lori, is nice enough to listen to all of this and to put timestamps in exactly when things are happening during the study group. You can go back well over the last year and know where all of those different timestamps are going to be. Then you can just click the timestamp and move directly to that part of the video. That comes in handy. Let's do some questions. Enough of me talking. Let's do some Q&A. The way you would do that is to pop open a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA. That will take you to the page where a question will be waiting for you. There's also an app that you can use. It's called the Socrative Student app. That's the app that you would like. The Socrative Student app you can get from your favorite Google Play or App Store. Put it onto your mobile device, and you can also use that to answer questions. It will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. I don't care how you spell it, but Socrative sure does. So make sure that you spell it properly, or you'll be in a room by yourself with nobody else there, and there'll be no questions. So PROFESSORMESSER will get you there. And if you do all of that correctly, there will be a question waiting for you. This is actually a question from last month. Wow. What happened there? The question from last month that asks, what type of Bluetooth security feature ensures that the pairing process is only occurring between two specific systems? I think a number of you knew this one last month, and I think a number of you are going to know this one as well. You will have a number of options available to you. Those options are encryption, a username and password, a PIN, biometrics, or a swipe pattern. Those are your 5 different things you can choose from. And you can see as you're answering these things interactively, we can see that 81% of you have chosen some of these options that are here. Now, as we go through this, notice some of you are answering in the chat room. Please do not answer questions in the chat room. You instead need to answer the question here at professormesser.com/QA. We're all going to try to figure this out on our own. So please, no answers in the chat and no hints in the chat room. We're going to try to figure this out ourselves as we go through it. I appreciate that. Thank you for thinking about the others as you go through and answer these questions online. So 83% of you, as you can see, say, yeah, I think we're going with PIN. I think we're going with a personal identification number, a PIN, and that will get you there. 10% said encryption, 3% said username and password, 2% said biometrics, and 1% said a swipe pattern. That is one way to do it. That particular connection to get that on your mobile device, again, some folks in the chat room are asking, the app is Socrative Student App. Socrative Student App is the name of that app that you can get. Bluetooth, of course, if you've ever paired a Bluetooth device before, you know it's a PIN number. You turn on the Bluetooth discovery, then you say that I want to find that device. And once you select the device, it makes sure that the same PIN number is on both sides. Sometimes it gives you just a random PIN number. I'm being redundant, and I realize that. Sometimes the PIN itself is one that you input by looking at another device. So you've got some options there to be able to work through that. So that's where it really does come in handy to have that PIN functionality. That way you know that the device that you're pairing is really the device that you're looking at that moment. Some stranger can't come along and happen to pair with your device because you have that check and balance of that personal identification number to help with that. So if you're one of the folks that did answer, 85% of you answered personal identification number. Got that one absolutely right. Well done. So thank you for that. Let's go to some new questions, though. I've got new questions for you today directly from this Q&A. These are all new questions. I write them every month specifically for this study group. And the very first question I like to do on the study group is a performance-based question. Now, some of you know that when you take these industry exams, a lot of the questions you get are multiple choice questions. So you get questions that give you options just like the one we had, like this, where there are multiple choice answers where you just choose A, B, C, or D, and that's the answer. But at the very beginning of your exam, you're going to get a handful of performance-based questions. It might be 3, it might be 7, it might be more or less. It's somewhere in there. I think an average of 5 is probably right. So these questions will not be multiple choice. They might be fill in the blank. It might put you in a command prompt and ask you to perform a function. It might put you at the Windows screen. It might be a matching question, a drag and drop question. It could be many different kinds of questions. The type of question, though, still goes back to the exam objectives. So as long as you know the exam objectives, I feel it doesn't matter how they answer or ask the questions of you. You're going to answer the question with the knowledge that you have. So the question that I have for you today is a networking question. So here we go with our first question of the day, the performance-based question, which is, it's a tough one. It's a fill in the blank. The fill in the blank question asks, list the protocol TCP or UDP and the port number for these 5 different things. So I'm not asking you about a protocol and a port. I'm asking you for a very specific set of information, a TCP or UDP protocol and a port number, but I want you to be able to tell me what those are based on these 5 different descriptions. The first one is, I want to determine the IP address of www.professormesser.com. So to determine the IP address of www.professormesser.com, what is the protocol and port number that would be used to be able to do that? So the second one is automatically obtain an IP address. What is the protocol, TCP or UDP, and what is the port number? Or in that case, maybe even port numbers. I'll accept that to be able to obtain an IP address. This third one is retrieve information from an LDAP server. And I'm retrieving this information, what protocol and what port number is being used. The fourth one is connecting to a console over an insecure connection. What protocol and port number is for that. And lastly, sending email messages between mail servers. What protocol and port number is that one? Fill in the blank's always hard. And I made this specifically fill in the blank instead of matching just to up the level of complexity on this one, because now we really do have to remember these things. We can't choose from a list. We can't drag and drop it. We can't pull down a pull-down menu and select. We really have to go through the process of figuring out these. Some of you in your chat, notice the chat is also fill in the blank, are giving me the names of protocols, which is even better. You're telling me the name of the protocol, but you're not giving me port numbers. You're not telling me if it's TCP or UDP, and you're not telling me the port number itself. You're giving me names. So I don't want the names either, although that helps. You should be going through a couple of steps. You should look at that and say, oh, that uses this particular protocol, which communicates over TCP or UDP number and the number after that. So you will have to go through that process in your mind as you fill out all of those. Fill in the blanks are tough. I get it, but that's okay, because we're going to figure out where all of these things happen to work. Make sure that you're familiar with these and working through them too. These become very difficult to kind of figure out what these happen to be. I'm going to try to make sure I can keep an eye on all of this. We're going to do that. Make sure this is all in here. Whenever we start working through these, we're going to try to figure this out. The Q&A is right here at the bottom. Go to professormesser.com/QA. That's what that QA is for. Right there at the bottom. You'll be able to do it. A lot of you are stepping through these. I'm reading through the answers as you're sending them through. You're doing a very good job with most of these. Some of you are missing one or two, but that's okay. This is one of those examples where we do have to remember what these different protocols are, because you will run into this in your normal daily operation. There will be firewalls that will be blocking this traffic. There will be personal firewalls on a device and firewalls on a network that might prevent you from seeing some of this information. So absolutely go through and become familiar with those. You'll be pretty good here. You'll be able to do that and get familiar with those different topics. You're doing great though. Let's see how we did with these. Yeah, I'm sorry there's no links in the chat room you can put there, but right there at the bottom you can see it's professormesser.com/QA to get you to the QA page. Let's get the answers now. We've fooled around long enough to be able to do this. So I would like absolutely to be able to go through this as well. Let's see if we can go and get the answers. Here we go. First one is determine the IP address of www.professormesser.com. So thinking about that and what's available for that IP address, you should automatically be thinking determining an IP address is probably going to be the domain name system, DNS. And in your mind, you should figure out that for name resolution commonly uses UDP over port 53. That's the process in your mind you should go through for figuring these out. Now, some of you may have seen also DNS can use TCP. TCP commonly used when somebody's doing a zone transfer. That's commonly a back-end process with DNS that in stations normally do not use. You should probably rarely, if ever, see DNS using TCP. For devices that are simply trying to get an IP address, or perhaps do the reverse resolution where they have the IP address and they're trying to get the name, DNS will do that too. And all of that is done over the UDP protocol, port number 53. Let's do another one. The second one is automatically obtain an IP address. Again, you should start thinking about what that protocol would be. I think most of us know that's DHCP. That's the process of automatically having an IP address assigned to a workstation. And DHCP commonly uses UDP port 67 and UDP port 68. I will take both or either of those as the answer. So do not worry if you're trying to figure out which side I was talking about. That's the sides I meant. Both of those will work. I will accept both of those. On your exam, it won't be as vague and difficult to figure out in the fill in the blanks. It will be very specific. You won't have any problem understanding this. Really, it's just me. I'm your problem today with figuring out. I am the one who is not specific. I'm the one being vague. The third one is retrieve information from an LDAP server. I gave you the protocol right in the name, LDAP. So LDAP is the one that we really have to deal with. LDAP, you should automatically think, oh yes, that's using TCP, and it's using it over port 389. That is the part. This almost becomes a trivia question once you know what the protocol is, which is why on the exam, you're probably not going to be given a list. They won't tell you DNS, DHCP, LDAP. They will give you these types of descriptions and ask you to understand them. The fourth description is connect to a console over an insecure connection. And if you're ever connecting using a console over insecure, it's not going to be secure shell or SSH. It's going to be the insecure version, which is Telnet. And Telnet, of course, uses TCP over port 23. Those are the next to last one. So we've got DNS, our DHCP, our LDAP, our Telnet. The last one Send a message between mail servers. So this is not us downloading an email. This is technically not necessarily us sending an email, but it is the same protocol. Between mail servers use SMTP, the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, to communicate, and that protocol uses TCP over port 25. So those are the 5 different port numbers. Now, if you were looking at this and it wasn't quite clicking, or you weren't quite sure about whether it was TCP or UDP, it does make a difference. And it's very important that you understand the difference. Some of the folks in the chat room are saying, let's go through what the differences between TCP and UDP are, and we just don't have the time for that in this first hour. But one of the things you should be familiar with is what those overall differences are, the primary differences between those two protocols. But perhaps more important, know how these protocols are used. You will run into these protocols in your normal operation. You'll need to understand how they communicate, where they communicate, how firewalls affect these protocols. And unless you know whether it's TCP or UDP, and unless you know the port number, it's going to be very difficult for you to troubleshoot those. So very quickly, DNS was UDP 53. The second one was DHCP, which uses UDP 67 and UDP 68. The third was LDAP, which uses TCP 389. The fourth was Telnet, which uses TCP 23. And the last is SMTP, which uses TCP 25. Now, if some of these weren't quite very familiar, you're trying to figure out the details, you're trying to remember, all of these are in the CompTIA exam objectives. They are listed out. Focus on what's written in the objectives. You don't need to go outside the scope of the exam objectives. Go to professormesser.com/objectives, and you can click over to the CompTIA site and get on that list. Make sure you have that list of objectives there. Well, that was an involved fill-in-the-blank question. Hopefully we will not get fill-in-the-blank questions like that on our exam, but occasionally you will. Let's do one that's more of a visual daily double, if you will. This one is one directly from the 221,001 exam that gives a picture. So if you're listening in on the podcast, I'm sorry I won't have a picture available for you, but here is the picture that asks, which of the following would be the most common use of this connector? Now, this is a multiple choice question. No more fill in the blank for those. So hopefully this is one you've seen before. Which of the following would be the most common use of this connector? And you can see the connector is up there on the screen. Remember, no answering in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA, where I have 5 different options for you. One of them is high-speed networking, laser printing, secondary display, keyboard and mouse extension, and stereo speakers. Let's see if you can figure out all of those. Maybe that would be something that you can be familiar with. I think you should know what some of those were. Let's see if you can get through some of those details. I think I'm hitting the wrong buttons on here. So if some of you are seeing some of this on the screen, I apologize. I'm playing around with the chat room as people are sending this information. We'll figure it out. We'll get some of those. I need to undo some of the things that I did before. So I apologize if you got stuck in some of those. You'll, of course, bear with me as we're figuring out the chat room. See if you know what those are. There's the connector. I think of a better use. There's a better picture of the connector. There it is. Now you can really see it for this one. Which one of those? I know we went from a multiple choice to a fill in the blank to a multiple choice. This can be pretty difficult to go back and forth to these. Hopefully you've been able to do that. Figure out these details. This is one where knowing interfaces is actually pretty important. Some people dismiss this on the exam as saying, why do I need to know what an interface looks like? Well, that's because you will be faced with putting together these systems, and unless you know what these odd assortment of interfaces do on the back of these computers, you're going to have a very difficult time figuring out the details of this. Hopefully you'll be able to know what that's about too. Hopefully that'll be something you can work through. So let's see how you did with this. We've got a number of you answer this one. So the question was, which of the following would be the most common use of this connector? You can kind of see the connector on the screen here. Not exactly the best visual display here to have that necessarily put there, but hopefully you can figure it out. The answers were high-speed networking, laser printing, a secondary display, keyboard and mouse extension, and stereo speakers, and 86% of you gave a display of what that is. Hopefully that's one where you are familiar with this and having all of those things there. Maybe you are familiar with these. The secondary display. This is indeed a DisplayPort connector. This is a connector where it doesn't do high-speed networking. It doesn't handle laser printing. It doesn't handle a keyboard or mouse extension. It doesn't connect to stereo speakers. That is a video connection. And that video connection, probably the most important part of this video connection, by the way, is this little button on the top. Let's go back to the big picture. This is the most important part of this connector, by the way, is this little button. I can't tell you how many times I've seen DisplayPort interfaces are completely mangled and broken because people don't realize that these video connectors have a little snap connection on them. You can see that there's little spikes on the top. Those spikes will connect in and snap in. So you can't pull it out unless you push down on the button, and then it will very easily come out of the video connection. So make sure that you're familiar with that when you're trying to finally remove this DisplayPort connection. Don't try to pull on it and yank it out. You should never do that with any type of connection. The connector should simply slide out easily. Make sure you're familiar with those. Here's the difference between a full-size DisplayPort and the mini DisplayPort connections. These are VESA standards. You will see them everywhere on our display interfaces. Make sure that all of those are there. And we also have quite a bit that we can look at. There are packeted type data in here as well. So there is often other types of data, especially across the mini DisplayPort and how it operates, since that also is shared with the Lightning type connectors. Not Lightning type connectors, the Thunderbolt type connectors. Those were the original Thunderbolt. This is also a very good way you can convert between HDMI and DVI to DisplayPort because it's a passive connector. You don't have to do any conversions to make that happen. So it comes in handy to be able to have those there. So on those things that we were talking about, these types of interfaces are the ones where you are plugging in very commonly video displays and having that there. This is one that becomes very useful to have that functionality. So if you answered C, secondary display, 87% of you got that one absolutely right. That is what you would be plugging in. Technically, you can have other types of data running over DisplayPort connection. Some in the chat room were saying, what about having audio? You could have audio. You could have actual other types of data running over these types of connections as well. But the question asked what the most common use of this connector is. The most common use of this connector is for display connections. You would not use this type of connector to plug in stereo speakers. It is not something you would use. It is not really like an Ethernet cable. You do not use it to plug in a network connection or a printer or a keyboard. This is almost exclusively used as a secondary display connection and a primary display connection, or just display in general. So that's how you can think about how those different technologies are used, but that's how we're going to use this one anyway. Let's do another question. I've got one for you. We're going to shift gears into a BIOS question. It says a BIOS of an Intel computer has enabled the VT option. Which of these would be most associated with this configuration? Would it be extended physical memory addresses? Would it be a standard instruction set for application developers? Would it be additional protection against malicious software? Would it be support for large boot drive sizes? Or would it be for OS virtualization? Got 5 different options to be able to do that. Hopefully you're familiar with working with these technologies in the BIOS. The question again was, the BIOS of an Intel computer has enabled the VT option. Which of these would be most associated with this configuration? Would it be an extended physical memory address? Would it be the standard instruction set for application developers? Would it be the additional protection against malicious software? Would it be support for large boot drives? Would it be, I've got another couple in here, or would it be support for large boot drives or OS virtualization? There we go. That's what we're working through. We're trying to figure out all these different ones to have that there. There we go. trying to get everything working for the question. Hopefully, you're familiar with these. I think I can figure these out too whenever I'm working through these. Hopefully, you're familiar with this. Please know comments in the chat room have all of these things here. That's where whenever you start getting into the details of this. Yes. So the first thing you have to do as you look through the question is figure out what the question's asking for. And where the computer has enabled the VT option, so it's helpful if we know what the VT option is. If you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We want to go to professormesser.com/QA, and you will be able to answer this one as well. Hopefully that will help you as you're going through this. These are pretty useful. As you start going through the details of this, I like to really break down the question and then break it down from there. So hopefully that's one that you're familiar with. Yes, some of you have seen this in the video. Perfect. I'm going to talk also about these details and how these work. So this is one where you should be able to break this down. Let's see how you did. A number of you have answered this one. How did we do? 90% of you say that it's OS virtualization. Wouldn't it be ironic if suddenly, when 90% of us didn't get that one very, very correct? Let's see if we did. We're going to talk specifically about VT. VT stands for virtualization technology. You were spot on. There's no question there. You folks knew that one solid. These are two different types of technologies depending on what type of processor you have. If it's an Intel processor, it is VT that you will see in the BIOS. You need to turn that on if you're using virtualization software on your computer and you would like to use that virtualization technology that is built into the CPU itself. If you are using an AMD processor, it's a different type of technology. It's called AMDV. So a little bit different in terms, but the functionality is basically the same. We are using the processor itself that enables some virtualization capabilities that controls memory and disk space and networking and a lot of functions of the CPU that allow for the virtualization technologies. So make sure you're familiar with some of those. This is one that you will run into on the exam. This is one where the exam objectives, there's a whole section on cloud computing and virtualization, and this comes directly from that. In fact, this one came from section 4.2, client-side virtualization is the name of the video right there at the bottom. So make sure you're familiar with all of the things specific to virtualization. These questions will come up on the exam. I find that section 4, not a huge percentage is asked of section 4, but it seems to be a larger amount considering the amount of topics in that section. So make sure you're familiar with those as you go through all of these pieces. It will help you later on. Well, as you know, on the exam, there's a ton of information on the exam. And of course, my videos contain all of the topics from the CompTIA exam objectives. What I've gone through is every single video. I've taken all of the text, all of the graphics, all of the tables. I've created specialized graphic images. I put them all into one document. These are my course notes, and my A+ course notes for the 221,001 and 221,002 are available here. Now, as the name implies, these are course notes. They are notes that are taken from my course. So this doesn't replace watching the videos. It doesn't replace a good book. It doesn't replace Q&A, and it certainly doesn't replace any hands-on. But sometimes it's nice to have that summarization of information all in one place, and you can see that in my course notes. You'll find out information about these at professormesser.com/1000 notes. For those of you who want to see what they look like, here they are. Here is the PDF that you would get when you pull this down for the 1001 exam. I think it's 58 pages total. We can click on any of these to be able to get information about these. So for instance, client-side virtualization, I'm going to click on that section. Here's all the information from client-side virtualization. In fact, resource requirements, CPU processor support, Intel virtualization technology, VT is right there. So you're able to see all of the things that ask about those details. See, there's more graphics on here, more details. There's everything that's in this document is really focused on giving you the specifics of what you've already learned, but in a really compact form. So if you want to know more about those, there's also, by the way, a physical form. I think I have the actual book here. There we go. Here it is. There's the actual book. So you can see in this book that I've got all of these things that I've gone through. Now, I just knocked something and lost everything that was on my iMac. So I'm going to have to figure out the details of that in a moment. But there is the book that is the physical version of this. So if you're someone who is wanting a physical version, you can get both of those available on this. Okay, here is the next one on the list that is asking a RAID question, and it asks, which of these RAID types would require a full restore from a backup after a drive failure? Which one of these would require a full restore from a backup after a drive failure? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA, and you'll have the options of RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, or RAID 1 plus 0. Those are your 5 different options. Hopefully you're familiar with these to have those there. Maybe it's one where you've been through these before. You've stepped through these different options before. Feel free to have a look at these. RAID's one of those things you do have to know on the A+ exam. You will run into RAID all the time whenever you start working through these. So feel free to have a look at the details of this. Hopefully that's one where you do know what the differences are for all of this. Think about the video on RAID. I've got a lot of RAID that I use here in the studio. Every organization out there that has any type of server is going to have RAID. So you absolutely need to know these different flavors. In fact, the RAID you might be running is a combination of different types. So be very familiar with this and have an idea of what these happen to be. So hopefully this will be one you can really focus in on and know the answers. Which of these RAID types require a full restore from a backup after a drive failure? This is an important thing too, because drives fail. When the drive fails, now what do you do? That's something you're always faced with. The answer in the chat room, a panic, actually sort of true. There will be panicking going on when the drive fails. But which one of these will require a full restore from backup when the drive fails? Hopefully, this is one where you can figure out these details. Let me close out some of these screens I have in front of me. Let's see how we did with this one. Well, we're a little more torn on this one. We're not all quite on board with exactly what this one might be. So some of us think, 64% of us think it's RAID 0. 15% of us think it's RAID 1. 14% say RAID 5, practically a tie. And then 7% said RAID 1 plus 0. This is one of those things where you really do need to get an understanding of what's the next step. What do we do if there's a problem? You need to be very familiar with the RAID front end for your RAID controller. Every RAID controller or every system that handles RAID is going to be a little bit different. There's going to be different ways that you access it. Some of them access it through a BIOS that's on the RAID controller itself. So you reboot your computer and you're able to access details about the RAID configuration. Some of them use software front ends that allow you to access the RAID controller. Some of them, it's an entire unit that's providing RAID. You'd access it through a web front end like the one that I have here. So you're able to see all of these different drives. This is my RAID array. It's kind of an old snapshot of it, but it gives you an idea of the 12 different drives that are here. And I have different types of RAID configurations in this single unit. You can see there's different volumes here. There's volume 1 and volume 2 and a volume 3. So I've got different volumes of information that I'm collecting, and I'm using different types of RAID to be able to do this. Now, you have to first know what type of RAID are you using, and then you know what to do with it. So there are 4 different types for A+ you have to know. And RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, and RAID 10, or what some people call RAID 1 plus 0, is listed here. I've also got a summary of the disks that are required for this. And then lastly, single drive failure breaking the RAID with data loss on RAID 0 is the one we were looking for. That's the one that 64% of you said that's the one. Because when you have one of those drive fails in RAID 0, there's no redundancy with RAID 0. That is the 0 in RAID 0. We often say that RAID 0 is 0 redundancy. That's a good way to think about it. So RAID 0, a single drive failure breaks the array with data loss. And that means that if a single drive failure breaks the array and there is data loss, that means we have to replace the drive and now we have to restore from backup. That's the challenge. RAID 1, notice the array will work as long as one drive is operational. No data loss. We simply replace the drive and we keep going. We don't have to restore from backup. RAID 5, a similar configuration that we only need all drives operational except for one. So again, we don't lose data and we don't have to restore from backup. And RAID 10, which is a combination of RAID 1 and RAID 0, we can lose all but one from each set of mirrors, which means we can lose one drive and still not have to restore from backup. The only one of these four that requires a restore from backup after a bad drive is RAID 0. That was the answer, and that was the one that 65% of you said. Now, an interesting conversation going on in the chat room is that RAID 0, but if you're in the cloud, why do you have to deal with RAID 0? RAID is not backup. That is an important distinction. That is an incredibly important distinction. Having a RAID array is not the same thing as having a backup. Those are two very different things. You still have to back up the data that's in your RAID array. Now, I'll give you an example of this. What if I'm working on a spreadsheet and then I accidentally Control-A to select everything. I hit the delete button. I save the file again. Whoops, I just overwrote everything that was in my spreadsheet with blanks. And I've turned off undo, or I've closed the program and I want to come back to it. It's a blank screen. Wow, I just lost my spreadsheet. I need to go back and get a copy of this from my backup. Oh, it's okay. We have RAID. Let's go to our RAID array and, oh, wait, we saved your blank spreadsheet on the RAID array. So we can't restore it from that array because RAID isn't backup. That's the deal. RAID most commonly used for redundancy. It's very rare you would find someone using RAID 0. Who wants to have a drive fail and then the whole thing is worthless? You really are using something very commonly, a RAID 1 or RAID 5 or a variant of those. So that is why you'll find RAID 1, a common one that I've seen used, where I have literally walked into a client before and found on their server that one of the drives in their RAID 1 configuration failed months ago. They didn't know because they didn't have anybody monitoring their systems up to that point. And they didn't know that the drive even failed because it was RAID 1. It kept working with the other drive in place. So, of course, all we did was remove the bad drive, replaced it. It copied itself and remirrored itself, and then everybody was up and running with redundancy. But if anything was deleted from that, you still could not recover that with RAID. You still need a backup. That's the important part of it. So keep those things in mind and know how to react if a drive fails. This information in this slide came from my video 5.3 Troubleshooting Hard Drives. That's the place to go to find out more about that one. Let's do another question. I've got one for you. Since we're talking about fixing things and doing break fix, here's a good one for break fix. This question asks, a technician is working on a laptop display and finds inverters installed behind the LCD panel. What type of display is inside of this laptop? And there's the different options available for you. A technician's working on a laptop display finds inverters installed behind the LCD panel. What type of display is inside of this laptop? CCFL, incandescent, OLED, or halogen? It's really asking what type of lighting is used for the inside of this laptop, isn't it? So better question is just to listen to what I'm saying rather than what I'm typing on the screen, apparently. That's always the challenge, is making sure I say the right thing in these questions. What type of lighting is being used in this laptop? I think is a better question for these to have this. For those of you in the chat room, I do live streams with these study groups for all of my courses. So if you're watching A+ Network Plus Security Plus, you can always find out when the next live event is going to be by going to professormesser.com/calendar. professormesser.com/calendar. So one more LED. Sorry, there's 5 there. CCFL, incandescent, OLED, halogen, and LED. Those are your 5 options. Thank you. I need to go through and make sure that I can have this all on my screen. Make sure we have all of those things available. That's one of the things I always look at when I'm trying to figure out answers to these. I need to break down the ones that I know it can't be. There's a couple here that just would not be the right thing. So make sure you're familiar with that. Make sure you know what things would not be. Now, if you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. Please no answering in the chat room. Please no comments in the chat room or hints in the chat room. We want to figure out what this happens to be on the screen, figuring out those. We'll figure it out. We'll get that. Don't worry. We'll have all of those. Laptops are a difficult one to deal with. They have such different technologies than a desktop, and yet a lot of them are shared. But if you ever get to a point where you have to troubleshoot a laptop on the inside and work with the internals of a laptop, I am just not good inside of a laptop. I will work on them, and I can make it through fixing things that inside a laptop. I just don't like that intricate type. I don't have brain surgeon hands. I drink too much coffee. I shake too much. Whatever it is, not exactly my favorite kind of troubleshooting. But it's very gratifying when you replace that LCD screen and you turn on the laptop and everything works. I always like, once I'm finished with it, I'm fine with it. It's during the process I always seem to have a problem trying to get this to work. Let's see how you did with this one and getting through these details of this. We've got, how do we do? Let's click the button. We're a little torn with what type of backlight we're using here. 43% of you, not a majority, but certainly a plurality of you say it's CCFL. 33% of you say it's LED. 14% of you said it's OLED. And then 7% of you said incandescent. And finally, 2 of you say halogen. So there's different options available that you could have chosen to put into this. Let's see how we did, though. I have the answers on this screen. There's different kinds of backlights you will find for a laptop. One that's probably the most prevalent these days is the LED backlight. Instead of having the fluorescent tubes that we used to have on laptops for many, 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 many years, now we've practically moved everything over to LED. LEDs are nice because they can use DC power, the same power that's used on the inside of your laptop for everything else. LEDs are very useful. They're energy efficient. They're very clean light. You can get exactly the type of light temperature you would like. And you could put more than one light, kind of even it around, do some interesting things with this. But if you ever find an inverter behind the screen, that means that you're having to take the DC power and invert it to AC, because that particular screen is not using LED. It's using cold cathode fluorescent lamps, CCFLs. These cold cathode fluorescent lamps need AC power. So to get the AC, we have to invert it over to this and be able to figure out those details. This is one wherever I start breaking through and figuring out how do I really understand these? These are the 2 technologies you're going to run into, is these 2. Focus on those 2 different ones. If you see an inverter, it's a fluorescent lamp. If you don't see an inverter, it's LED. And practically everything you're going to work with going forward is LED. But you still have people with some of these old laptops. And this is the thing I think that people mistake out of the CompTIA exams, is that a lot of people are still using older operating systems, older technologies, older machines. Those are the ones that are there. So if you see an inverter, it's always going to be CCFL. And that's why on this one, a technician working on a laptop finds inverters in the LCD. There's no question it's got to be a CCFL, a cold cathode fluorescent lamp. You will still see some LED displays occasionally pop up in a repair that's going to need a new inverter. But you don't have to kind of keep them in stock anymore. You sort of buy them as you need them, because we're swapping out people's laptops. They're getting the newest laptops. But there's always that one person in the office that will not give up their laptop. They're using the older laptop and being able to do that. That's what an inverter does, is invert from DC to AC. It's exactly what it does. Hopefully you'll be able to be familiar. Are you that person in the office, writing pacifist? You don't want to give away. Everything works perfect on it. You're hugging the laptop. I'm with you. I understand. I hate converting over and having to figure out the details, and then everything goes black. Sometimes maybe I'll be giving up this machine that I have in front of me sooner than I think. One never knows. I seem to have hit the limit of what it can do. Let's do another question. I've got some for you that we can go through. We got to make up some time, don't we? Have those there. This question is another one. This is definitely one from the new exam, and it asks, which of the following would commonly be used to control home automation devices using a meshed network? Which of the following would commonly be used to control home automation devices using a meshed network? I'm missing the little display screen that I have. There we go. Get this going on here. The options are 802.11, RFID, Zigbee, Bluetooth, NFC. Those are your 5 different options there. Which of the following would commonly be used to control home automation devices using a meshed network? Would it be 802.11, RFID, Zigbee, Bluetooth, NFC? I think that's one that you should have gotten into, worked through these. I think that I would like to see what these are. Maybe you've run into these types of technologies, all 5 of them, valid technologies that could be used with wireless networks. That's the real key, is figuring out the details. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. Please no hints in the chat room. We want to make sure everybody has a chance to figure out the details of this. Whenever I start looking at all of these answers, I think that's when I try to remove the ones that are just not quite what I'm trying to do. Maybe you know what these happen to be. I think that becomes useful for me too. I think whenever I also break this down, these questions are very specific with their terms. So make sure that you are understanding what these terms happen to be. This is probably the best and most important part of this, is that the exam itself may have a very long question. You almost have to be good at reading to be able to get through these exams. They're very rarely, if ever, going to ask you a trivia question. So this is one where you do need to think about it. So the question here, and some people asking here, is that, well, couldn't technically more than one of these be used to be able to do this? Well, technically, I think all of them could be used to do this. However, that's not the question. And that's an important consideration now that you mention it in here, is that very often you are going to get a question where more than one of these could technically be correct, but make sure you read the question again. For example, the question says, which of the following would commonly be used? It might say the best option. It might say the first thing you should do. So that's one that whenever you start getting into this, this becomes really useful to know this. Here we go. We'll make sure some of this is really taken care of with all of these. Read through the question, become familiar with this, make sure you know what these are. That's really the key. And at the bottom is where you'd answer the question. Go to professormesser.com/QA. That's where you would answer the question and have this here as well. So hopefully you will be familiar with these. Let's see how you did with these, getting familiar with those. Here we go. The question is asking between 802.11, RFID, Zigbee, Bluetooth, and NFC. And if we look at our list, we are practically torn between 2 different options. We have 802.11 is 41% of you, and then Zigbee, 45% of you chose Zigbee. So 44% Zigbee. I guess if we go with the one that got 2 extra percentage points, that would be it. These, by the way, are not trick questions. These should jump out at you. These should be very obvious to you when you're reading through them. And if you're thinking that a question is a trick question, then I suspect maybe there are aspects of the question or the answers that perhaps you haven't quite figured out, or maybe you need some additional reading on. After we have the 42 and 44%, there's not much left. 8% said Bluetooth, 4%, or now 3% said RFID, and then 2% said NFC. So how do we figure out what these would be? Well, we had 2 very specific clues in this particular question. The first one said control home automation. That was the first big clue in here. And the second one said meshed network. So we need to understand what both of those things are, is controlling home automation There's a segment of networks that are used for that. 802.11 is certainly used for that. Zigbee is certainly used for that. I guess to some degree, Bluetooth is used for that as well. So there's 3 different protocols, 3 different networking topologies, to be more precise, that would commonly be used for controlling home automation. The other 2, RFID and NFC, are rarely, if ever, they're never used for home automation. So those are 2 we can kind of throw out. And you guys did that. 3% of you, 2% of you only choose those 2 options. That leaves us with those 3. The other key word here is the one that said a meshed network. And that's the one we wanted to focus on because there are a couple of different home automation or Internet of Things technologies that use this meshing. This is one where you install it and you just forget that it's there. So imagine having your lights in your home, the light switches, the lamps, the garage door, the speakers, the televisions. Let's say they all have the Zigbee technology inside of them. And what they will do is find each other on the network. They are able to notice all of the other Zigbees, all of the other bees in the beehive, and they start talking to each other. So even though this uses a relatively low power and a shorter distance of communication, one device on one side of your house is still able to talk to a device on your other side of the house because it hops through all of the different Zigbee devices from one side to the other. This becomes really useful, being able to do this. So that means that you could install all of these devices. You don't have to set them up. You don't have to configure anything. You don't have to tell it where all of the other devices are. It simply finds them and uses them. And there's 2 major technologies that do this. Anybody happen to know the other type of common topology used for a meshed network for home automation? I'll take the answer in the chat room on that one. If you happen to know, there it goes, Z-Wave. Z-Wave is the other one. In fact, these are competing technologies. So if there are some of your devices that will be Z-Wave technologies, other devices will be Zigbee technologies, and they don't talk to each other. It's a big fight going on right now. We don't know exactly what's going to win. We sort of do. We sort of know where things are going. But that's the real challenge. What you'll commonly have is there's one single controller for it. That controller connects to your 802.11 network, not over a mesh. It just connects to either an Ethernet connection or an 802.11. Usually mine's an Ethernet. So some of these aren't even over Wi-Fi. And then you're able to access the lights, the garage door, the locks on the doors, those types of things. So that does run into it. Now, I know we're at the top of the hour, but because of my massive power blackout outage thing, let's do another question. We've got more to go through here. So let's do one more so we can get through this, and then I'll turn it around so you can give me that. I gave you a couple examples of the Zigbee light switches. Amazon Echo and others are very good examples of devices that use Zigbee and that you may already have in your house. Have that there. Here we go with another question for you. The question, it's another visual daily double that is asking what type of connector would be the best choice for this panel. I'm sorry, people that are listening on the podcast. My apologies. There are visual aspects to this exam, though. And this is one of those visual aspects. So here's a panel of these connectors. Is this ST? Is it BNC? Is it F? Is it RS-232? Or is it SCSI? So your 5 different options. ST, BNC, F, RS-232, and SCSI. I have a bigger picture of this panel so you can have a look at what these are, being able to work through them. These should help you anyway in having these things here. Make sure you're familiar with these topics as we start going through all these types of connectors and being able to work through them. Make sure you know all about them. I'm going to get rid of some of these. Maybe this is one also that you've run into whenever you start working through these. If you haven't seen these before, definitely become familiar with them. They are part of the CompTIA exam objectives. Become very familiar with using them. In fact, I've used these in so many different types of connections. They're not just any type of one type of thing. You will see these pop up all over the place, which is why I didn't even say, why is this particular connector, what's it used for? Well, it can be used for so many different things. That's why I didn't give you that type of question on this one. I see this all the time and being used on these networks. Maybe you're familiar with these. That does come in handy whenever you start working through all the details of this. Maybe you're familiar with some of these and how they work. So those are the connectors. Put in what you think the answer is. Your answer, possible answers again are ST, BNC, F, RS-232, and SCSI. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and you can answer that question. These do come in handy. I've seen these used in so many different things. We'll talk more about this in a moment. I don't want to give it away. Let's see how we did with this one and being able to work through this. I think whenever I start trying to figure out the details, it's always trying to break these down. Well, 71%, it's certainly a majority. Not a hugely strong majority on this one, but certainly a majority said B and C. That's what we think it is B and C. Now, 10% of you said F. So if we went with the double digits, I would go with that. 9% of you said RS-232, pretty close, almost a tie for second place. You've got 7% of you that said ST, and 2% say SCSI. So there's the different options. I'd say that's a strong majority as well. I'd say if I had to go with a winner, chicken dinner, I would go with B and C, the bayonet, Neil, councilman. Now, the bayonet part is when you push it in and you twist it to lock it in. That is the bayonet connector. It's a standard bayonet connection when you're working with it. This particular bayonet connection designed by Paul Neal at Bell Labs and Carl Councilman for those. Exactly like a bayonet, or you would find anywhere. You will find bayonet type connections for the purposes of the CompTIA exam. This is in the networking section. So if you're working with some types of higher speed gigabit connections, you will find coax being used for this with BNC at the end. It's probably more commonly used for DS3 WAN links. Of course, someone in the chat room had to bring up British Naval Connector, which is a name for some reason that people have associated with this. This is neither British nor naval. So the name British Naval Connector, apparently the British came up with that because they weren't happy that we invented it. Ha ha, we did it, not you. That's one of those where the BNC connectors, now I'm going to get a lot of emails from this. BNC connectors, though, we did come up with BNC. Has nothing to do with British Naval Connectors, I'm sorry. But if you are British, an easy way to remember the nomenclature, remember the different ones there. That's one. Whenever I go through trying to figure out the details, that's what they are. Now, on the better side of this, not a fantastic connector to have to work with. So the British can now laugh at me a little bit. If you've ever had to work with these coax cables, they are big, they are rigid, they are bulky. I don't think you can see it in here, but all of the video I run out of the back of my video switcher are all BNC connectors. So I have this massive cable, this grouping of cables. I'm going to have to put this into my Instagram coming out of the back. In fact, I have it on my Instagram coming out of the back. I'll have to find that and show it to you, where it's just all these BNC connectors on this. So this is a bit of a pain to have to work with. It's not the easiest thing to be able to go through. So sometimes it does come in handy to be able to have this here. Let me see if I can find that list of connectors. I think I have the connector right here. There it is. There is the BNC. No, that's not it. Here we go. Put it right thing on my screen. I'm putting myself on the screen twice. There's the BNC on the back of this video switcher that is used for these BNC connectors. So it is, but they stay in there. They're not going anywhere. Once you lock them into this connection, they are locked in, and you can't pull them out, which is why we use them for this. So that if it's something where you don't want something pulling out, this is a great one to use for those pieces. So BNC is great to have there. Now, the different options that were there, let's step through all of these different answers that I had for you. Let's get it there. I have, here we go. The answers here, B and C, obviously our right answer. If you answered B, 73% of you got that one absolutely right. The ST connector is what we call a fiber type connection. Some people have a different set of connectors they will use for fiber, and ST is one of those. There are a number of different fiber connectors you need to know. The F connector is the one you commonly see with cable television, where you screw it in, and you have to keep screwing it, and then you realize you didn't actually get it in there to begin with, so you have to kind of adjust it and then screw it some more and screw it some more and screw it some more, and you can't get it off. Once you get it on there, that's the F connector. RS-232 is the 9-pin serial connection that you will commonly see. Also a DB25 serial connection, technically also RS-232. RS-232 really is the signal that goes over that connection. And the SCSI connector. Now, all of these types of connectors are in the CompTIA exam objectives, so make sure you're familiar with those. Now, if you're someone who's watching this for continuing education unit credit, I know we're after the first hour, but we'll sneak it in there to have this there as well. You have to follow these instructions to be able to receive the digitally signed email from me. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, and when you do that, there will be a Contact Us link. Click on the Contact Us link, and if you would be nice enough in that subject line to put that this is the September 2019 A+ study group, and even in the subject line, put the super secret word of the month, which is B and C. We're going to go with the right answer here. B and C is our super secret code word of the month. You can also put it somewhere in the text of the message as well. Make sure you put your name and your email address on there, because this is how I get it back to you. If your email address is wrong, then it bounces back to me and it makes me sad. So I hate that when that happens. Make sure that's correct. Also, you can put anything you'd like into the text. I read through these myself and process them usually once a week, sometimes less than once a week. I try to get them done once a week, but that doesn't always happen. And I'll get them off to you. I'll send you back an email that says, you must have watched this. I certify that you have watched this, and because you gave me the super secret code word there. That's what that's there, and being able to work through that. B and C is that super secret code word, and you can put anything else in there as well. And be able to do that, again, you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website and click the Contact Us link. That is how you would make that happen. If you do not follow that process and you send me this information in a different kind of message, I can't process it. There's an automated process I use that expects these to always come from the Contact Us link. And if it does not come from the Contact Us link, I can't do anything with that. I have to stop, and there's a manual thing that has to take place, and then I get frustrated and my screen turns off. I don't know what goes on there, but there it is with those and being able to work through them. Well, I think we managed to make it through all of these questions without my system turning off again, but we've got plenty more. Don't go away. We got plenty more to do right now today. Remember that all of these questions came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. If you do not have these objectives, you are doing yourself a disservice. Make sure you have these objectives. They should be the first thing that you download and read through before you start your studies. They should be the last thing you read through before you take your exam. They're a fantastic checklist. If you're wondering, have I learned everything I need to learn for this exam? This document will tell you. Quite remarkable, everything they put in there. Make sure you take advantage of that. For those of you in the chat room that said, hey, do you do these for the other A+ exam? Do you do it for Network Plus? Do you do these for Security Plus? I absolutely do. We do one of these a month. You can always find out when the next one's going to be at professormesser.com/calendar. I've got another A+ study group in 2 days on Thursday. So come back on the 12th. We'll do another one of these for the 220-1002 exam. And then I've got another 2 set up next month for October 8th and October 10th. Next Wednesday, the 16th, is our Network Plus study group. And on the 23rd of this month, this is October. So September, it's Wednesday of next week, and it's Network Plus. And then the Wednesday after that is Security Plus. So I don't want to mess you up. But we are also doing it on October 16th, October 23rd, too. So we've got plenty of those. If you're watching this and it's after October and you're wondering, when is the next one going to be? Just go to professormesser.com/calendar. That's when the next one is going to be. Well, that ends all of our Q&A part, at least the part where I ask you the question. Now it's your time to ask me the question. So stick around. I'm going to open up the phone lines. I'll take questions from the chat room. We'll have to stop putting people in timeout in the chat room for asking questions finally. Don't forget about joining us on Twitter, on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. All you do is type ProfessorMesser.com/ the name of the social media you would like to find me on. ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube, ProfessorMesser.com/Twitter, ProfessorMesser.com/Instagram. That's how you do all of those things. Also, don't forget about my notes. For those of you that have purchased the notes, thank you. You're keeping all the lights on and keeping this craziness going. You can find out more about those at ProfessorMesser.com/1000notes. The calendar's there. Stick around. We got plenty more to go through, plenty of different things to discuss in this next hour. Thanks for being here this time, though. We'll see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Okay, the computer stayed on the entire time after that. Who knows what's going on with all of this craziness? Let me get my screen up and running here and get you back here. There we go. So let's now figure this out. Yes, the replay of this is immediately available. As soon as I stop streaming, YouTube spends a couple of minutes processing the video, and then it's available for you on the replay for all of this. Let me get my phone lines up and running. I need to get my Skype loaded, which I have not done. I need to get now my screen loaded on my laptop, which I have not done. Let's see if I can host a show and start a show. There we go. Nice. So let me call into my own show. Yes, I have to. My show is in the cloud, so I have to make all of that happen. Here it is. Can I call this? Yes, I guess I can. I guess I can call the same number here. There we go. Welcome.
Thank you for calling Collins to.
Well, you're welcome for me calling that. Now I have to type in some things on my side, and then I will tell everybody who's watching the stream how do you do this on your side. Let me type this in. There we go. And welcome. See, that's nice that I'm welcome. Now that means that you are welcome to call in as well. I'm also taking questions from the chat room, and we'll be able to talk and discuss some of those things as well. But some people like to call in over voice. I know it's antiquated, it's outdated, but we still do it. So you're welcome to call me over a telephone using voice communication. You would simply, in the continental U.S., call this toll-free number, 855-785-7545. You can also call from both east and west of the Rockies at 855-785-RJ45. If you are outside of the continental United States, you can still call in for free on Skype. Skype doesn't require any Skype minutes or any payments to be able to make a toll-free call. Just put a +1 at the beginning. So +1. 855-785-7545, and you can call in as well. So plenty of that to go through. Oh, I'm going to hear it from my British friends this time. I am so sorry. I couldn't resist when it came through there. Somebody catching the Coast to Coast reference. Thank you. For all of you listening in, it was really more of a Phil Hendry reference of Coast to Coast. So there's an even more esoteric reference of the esoteric reference for those of you. Thank you, London. Thank you for not hating me. I appreciate this. And I want to thank you. On you passed your 1001 and 1002. Michael, congratulations on passing both of those and earning your A+ certification. That's fantastic. Always love to hear that. Let's do another, speaking of questions, we might as well just jump into the chat room. Let's go to Jackson, 601 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Thompson, I'm calling from Jackson, Mississippi.
Yes, you are. Thank you, Jackson, Mississippi. What's your name? And what can we do for you?
Okay, I have a 2-year associate's degree in computer service and technology.
Great.
And I'm studying for the A+, and I'm just wondering, will that give me a good heads up or a head start in field without any on-the-job experience?
It sure helps. There's 3 or 4 things I always tell people they need when they're trying to get a job in IT. One of them is a formal education. So you've already hit the first part of that by getting an actual formal degree in the thing you're interested in doing. I got a formal education. Mine was in business, though. It was not in technology, but that's okay. It's still a formal education. Yours more specific on the technology, which is really great. The other thing I tell people they need is some type of industry certification. Certainly helps when you're walking into an interview to tell people, not only do I have what the school thinks I should have, but I have what the industry thinks I should have. And those two are a good 1-2 punch. I've often said that third thing is some practical experience. Now, when you're right out of school or you're right out of college or you're right out of getting the formal education, you don't always have the practical technical experience when you're jumping into this. But most employers know this. They know they are hiring people usually who do not have experience because they know they're going to train them. So I tell people not to worry so much about the practical experience part. If you wanted to get some practical experience under your belt, you could always try volunteering places. There's probably a church or a nonprofit in your area that would love to have someone knowledgeable maintain their antivirus, make sure their operating system is updated with the latest patches, make sure that their backup systems are working properly, or just help them answer questions about some of their computer things. Even if you aren't being paid, it's still practical experience and something you can put on a resume. And I've added a fourth thing. Sorry, go ahead.
I would say, like, I've built computer systems. I know how to replace a motherboard and all that type of stuff, and like build a whole computer system from the ground up, basically. And I was just wondering, like, is that something I could put on a resume?
That is absolutely something you can put on a resume, and perhaps more importantly, that's a great story to tell in the interview. When somebody talks to you and says, "Tell me about the things you've done in computers," you could tell them, "I love building my own computers. Here's the process I go through when I build a computer. I decide what I want the computer to do. Is it a gaming system? Is it used for media center? Am I doing this for a friend or a family member that just needs to surf around the internet? Tell them about going out to pcpartpicker.com or whatever website you use to help build the parts and put them together and make sure they're compatible. Talk to them about how you decide which motherboard you want, how you decide which memory you want, how you decide which cooler you would like to have on your CPU. I don't like to use the stock cooler. I like to use this one, and here's why. And talk about those things. Okay. To us, it's sort of mundane, and in some cases, maybe even a little too geeky to get down into the details. But if you're interviewing for these jobs in a help desk, they want to see your practical experience with that. That's valuable. And if you can explain to somebody the thought process you went through when you made those decisions, that's perhaps even more valuable than actually building the computer itself. So absolutely include that when you're talking to anyone, and definitely put it on a resume. The fourth thing I was going to mention that I tell people also to do is to start attending some of the user group meetings in your area. If you're in a geography that has a Microsoft user group, a Cisco user group, a VMware user group, any type of user group that's sort of a generalized technology user group, get involved with those folks, because the other people there work at some of these companies that you would like to work for. And being known to those folks, being able to see those people, ask them questions about the open positions at their companies, ask them what their companies look for when they are hiring. Those will give you directions on where you can go to be able to find somewhere that might be interested in hiring you. So those are the four things I always focus on: formal education, industry certification, some practical experience, and some familiarity with the people networking, the user groups in your area. Those are the four I recommend.
Okay, Professor. Thank you so much. You're a big help.
I appreciate you calling. Best of luck.
No problem.
That's always useful when you're on that hunt. It's not just throwing out resumes and hoping for the best. What you're trying to do is put together strategy that's going to get you the best possible turnout whenever you show up at these people's doors and make that happen. Let's go to Gainesville, 352. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, how's it going, Professor? My name's Tashawn. I'm calling from Clearwater, Florida.
Welcome. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Appreciate it. I just wanted to say thank you for all your help. I took my network test exam yesterday and passed it.
Nice.
And I think throughout the entire process, you've been a huge help. To anyone listening, I definitely would recommend buying the book. I kind of put it off. I bought the course like a year ago, and my voucher expires literally tomorrow. So I put it off, but I did start to actually study and at least listen to your videos about for like 2 hours a day for about 3 or so months. And I think the biggest thing that helped me was actually I figured out that you do like this live chat. So I sat in on the chat. So everyone definitely do the chat. But I just want to say I appreciate your help. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. Congratulations on your Network Plus. And there's nothing more motivating than that deadline of your very expensive voucher going away. So I'm glad you were able to put that together. That all worked out for the best. I'm glad to hear it. Congratulations.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for calling.
Hope you have a good day.
Thank you. You too. That's always a good feeling too, when you've gone through the process of you purchase the voucher, it's expensive, the time is ticking down, because some of these vouchers have expirations on them. Some of them are good for a year. Some of them are good for less. Sometimes there will be vouchers that are only good for a very short period of time, and you can sometimes get better deals on them. But that's one of those challenges in having an understanding and knowing exactly what you're going to run into. Let's go back to the phone calls. In the chat room, people are talking back and forth over TCP and UDP and how this works. I'm going to talk a little bit. Maybe we'll have time to talk about that today. I'm hoping we will because it's not quite as black and white or obvious as perhaps some people think that it might be. And you may be surprised at how the different protocols are used in different ways. So we'll talk about some of that. Let's go to 571. Arlington, Virginia. What's your name? What can we do for you? I hear myself. Might want to turn down that stream just a little bit and see what we can do. Are you there, caller?
Hello?
There? Hi, Michael. What can we do for you?
Actually, I am planning to take A+ certificate while I'm doing like my cybersecurity. So what do you recommend me to study?
Are you planning to take, you say the A+, or are you planning to take the Security Plus?
First of all, A+, then Security Plus.
Gotcha. And you're in the right part of the world, by the way, for the Security Plus. And I think the A+ is a good place to start with that. The recommendations I give to people, there are 4 different things I always tell people they need when they're studying for A+, Security Plus, or any industry certification. This applies to others, not just CompTIA's. One of those is you need a good book. Make sure that you have a good book. I don't mean my notes. Notes are not a book. You need a textbook, a big, thick, hundreds of pages sized textbook to get through all of the content that are in those exam objectives. There are a lot of options available on the market. I usually will recommend people to go to Amazon because you can read through the first chapter of the book. Some books read better than others. Books are very subjective. So certain authors may write better for you than others. So go through and read through those different books, see which one makes sense for you before you commit to one. The other one is to have plenty of hands-on. Make sure you get plenty of time on the computer, either on the 1001, it might make use to take apart a computer and put it back together. On the 1002 exam, a lot of your time is going to be spent on the Windows front end. Either one of those is good hands-on. I think there's a qualification. You read through information, but then actually doing it causes some other synapse in your brain to fire, I think. It's another way of learning that's important. It's very tactile, not tactical, tactile learning whenever you're going through it. The other thing I mentioned is watch videos. Videos do not have the depth of information of a book because they can't. They're a video. Videos are a different way of learning of this content that is different than a book, and a book is different than a video. So I always tell people to do both of those at a bare minimum and have that there. So of the last thing I would always recommend is good Q&A. That's sometimes some of the hardest thing to find, but anytime you can find some sample exams or some sample tests that you could go through, those will help you as well to see how much you learned on those other 3 processes. And if you concentrate and have all 4 of those, I think that would be the best strategy if you're ever working to pass these industry certification exams.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time of the video, and thank you for all the help.
Very welcome for that. Thank you for calling. I appreciate it. That's That's always good too. If you're ever in a process, you're trying to figure out, do I have the right things? Those are the 4 things: the book, the hands-on, the video, the Q&A. Those are your 4. And if you can find other people doing the same thing at the same time, that's another good place to go. Let's go to caller 773. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller.
Joe from Chicago.
Hello, Joe from Chicago. What can we do for you, sir?
Yes, Professor. I'd like to know what books do you recommend the best for people who are going for a CCNA exam? It has been a challenge to find a good book because some books are contradictory. You read a book and then some other author contradicts that and gives you a different approach, and it's all confusing on any topic. I'll show you 5, 6 books I have here, and sometimes they're hard to understand and they contradict each other. And they put you in a different path. You go all the way, try to research what he's talking about. At the end, you find out you're in the middle of nowhere.
It's a common problem with the CCNA. The CCNA is a pretty complex set of objectives. It is a hard exam. Sometimes people try to compare Network Plus and the CCENT or the first part of the CCNA. These are really different exams, remarkably different in content and remarkably different in complexity. The Cisco exams take the complexity level up a notch. Doesn't mean they're impossible to pass. It's just that they're much more detailed. There's a lot more hands-on. There's a lot more knowledge you have to know of the network. It's a very, very detailed exam to go through. Because of that, and I have a feeling this is what you've seen, the books that deal with these topics are intense. They are just as detailed. And in some cases, they are just so complex that you have to read through them multiple times. So I've got my Cisco certifications. I grabbed the Cisco Press books and read through those, but they are so dense in the amount of content that is in those books that it's almost difficult for me, who I've done this my entire career. I've worked with high-end networking. You have to read through these things 3 or 4 times to make sure that you're grasping some of the nuances of these networking concepts. But I find that for the most part, the Cisco books are very well written. They are spot on with understanding what you need to know for the exam. But there are other people that have written books for the CCNA. The Lamley books, for instance, are a little easier to read. The problem you run into with any books, and as you've seen, is there are inconsistencies sometimes and differences in what they will put in the book. Sometimes those are errors. And for those of you not familiar with this, anytime you have a book, it takes so long to get a book written and get a book published, and then it gets printed. They don't go back and correct problems or errors in these technical books afterwards. Instead, they produce an errata. So if you can look for your book title and then errata, E-R-A-T-T-A, errata. Look for that. There's usually an errata that is created and posted online with corrections that are in the book. I have people send me emails all the time that says, this book said this is wrong. I said, yes, they know it's wrong. They've already corrected it. It's in the errata. And you're right. You caught it, and that problem was in there. So for CCNA, not a lot of options on books, but the Cisco Press I always recommend, and then the Lamley books I recommend too, just because I trust him and the experience that he has had in the industry, and I've had a chance to talk with him personally, so I know the things that he knows, and those are pretty good books too, so you can't go wrong.
Thank you, Professor. Also, one last question, sir.
Sure.
What about Tracer?
Sorry, what was the question?
Using Packet Tracer to practice, create a network and practice on that connectivity issues and troubleshooting and installing routers, switches.
Packet Tracer is a must. Packet Tracer, for those that are listening in and not familiar with it, is an application from Cisco that is free. You just have to sign up for Cisco in their Network Academy. And if you sign up, you are able to use Packet Tracer and build a network virtually on your screen with Cisco routers, Cisco switches. You can turn on you can configure VLANs. You can turn on spanning tree protocol. You can put virtual computers onto the network. You can send traffic between the computers. You can capture the packets that's being sent between the computers across the network. You can slow it down, freeze frame it, so you can watch the packet as it goes every step along the way of the network. It is an essential learning tool if you are getting your Cisco certifications, or if you're really just interested in understanding more about networking. Packet Tracer from Cisco is a must. You have to make sure you know it. The better you get with Packet Tracer, the easier the certifications will be for you, Joe.
Okay. Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much. As always, you're very inspiring. Thank you very much for your help, and have a great day.
Thanks,
you,
Joe.
sir.
Same to you, sir. Good luck. That's great. I love that Joe's called him before, and I love that he's now looking at going further and deeper with the networking stuff. I think obviously the bulk of installed network infrastructures these days are Cisco. It becomes really useful to get an understanding. And what I like about Cisco's certifications is that they spend a lot of time teaching you the technology, and then they also teach you how to implement that technology on Cisco devices. But you could take that same technology knowledge that you have and implement that on other manufacturers' switches, other manufacturers' routers, other manufacturers' firewalls. Very, very useful to have that base knowledge. Now, of course, the commands to implement it on those other manufacturers' products are going to be different than Cisco's. But if you understand the nuances of an IPsec tunnel on one device, you're going to see the same configuration settings for IPsec tunnels on that other device. It's a very standardized thing. So as soon as you know about VLANs, you know about spanning tree, you know about all those other technologies, it's easy to apply them to almost anything else. Let's go, and other people in the chat room. Joe in the chat room, Packet Tracer is great. It is great. You could do 98% of what you need for the CCNT and perhaps for the ICND2 exam in Packet Tracer, and you'd be good to go. You wouldn't need any physical devices at all, and you'd be extremely knowledgeable in how the network operates. So pretty useful. Probably not required for Network Plus. Network Plus tends to focus on the tools that you need on a Windows desktop or a Linux desktop. That is the only thing you would need. But if you did some work in Packet Tracer, you need some Cisco knowledge to be able to do it. But if you worked in Packet Tracer, you would certainly be able to use that knowledge in Network Plus as well. It just goes a little bit beyond the scope of the exam objectives for me to recommend that for Network Plus. Let's go to Virginia, the 276 area code, if I can hit the button properly. Hello, caller. Thank you for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Professor, first of all, I want to thank you for all you do. I have became, as of last week, I took part 1 and part 2, and man, month of watching your videos, and I have had experience, 4 years help desk experience. I literally watch your videos every night for 4 hours.
Wow.
And I kicked butt in the certification. I want to tell the folks this much. Your questions are a bit harder than what there is on the actual exam. I just want to throw that out there. So, which is a good thing. So I appreciate your daily questions and everything you do. One thing I want to ask you, is there any possibility of, let me ask you this. What would you recommend? Would you recommend, as far as certifications go, to put like the certification number, or just put like CompTIA A plus certified on resume?
First, congratulations on your A plus. Did you take both of the exams on the same week?
Well, I took the first one on my birthday, which was on August 22nd, passed that one. And then I took the next one, September the 3rd or the 4th.
Wow, pretty close to each other. Well, that was a great birthday, and then second follow up with getting the second exam done was fantastic in a very short period of time. So, congratulations to that. It is it's one of those things where I kind of do the easy part, make the videos. You're the one who actually has to go into the exam room. So, congratulations. On the as far as showing people that you have this certification, and I would say for the most part, the automated and manual resume checking processes are just looking to see if you happen to have that certification on the list. So if you're certified in CompTIA A+, that generally is all you would have to put on the exam. I like the idea of putting your certification number on there as well. It not only gives people the notice that you're not really messing around here, you really did earn the A+. And I say this as someone who used to be a hiring manager and had to look through certifications and found places where people were just lying on their resume. And you get into a meeting and you say, tell me everything about this topic, and they know nothing about the topic. They have lied on their resume. You're able to piece that out. So having the number after, it's a little bit of a qualifier that says, not only do I have this, I really have it, and here's the number that qualifies it. That will help for the people who are manually looking through these. It doesn't help for the automated systems that are looking for keywords, but you've covered it in both cases by putting that after the fact. So absolutely promote it and let people know you have that certification. Plus, it's nice to see it just written down on the page for your own personal gratification. I think it's worthwhile considering how much time it takes to study, go through the process, the stress of the exams, and to finally earn the certification. I want people to know it.
Absolutely. And another question I had, sir. So I told my manager, I was like, I got A+. He's like, okay, I highly recommend Security Plus. So what I do now, what I've been doing for almost a week, watching your videos, learning on that. I want to ask you, is there any a possibility of you doing maybe, I know you do study group on monthly basis. Is there any possibility of you doing Security Plus questions like you do A+ on daily basis?
I would love to do it. Right now I'm doing daily questions for A+, a weekly question for Network Plus, and I have been considering adding another at least weekly question for Security Plus and perhaps daily ones as well. I'm not at the point. I have some Security Plus Q&A things that are going on that I don't think I can talk about until we get closer to probably to the Security Plus study group this month. But I think that will force me into doing more Security Plus Q&A. The real challenge I have is the time it takes to write the questions and get them posted. But I think if I could streamline them into the process, that it's not insurmountable. It's just another thing I need to add into my processes and have it that it's there. And I think at least one a week would be nice to have. And that shouldn't take up too much time to have it there. I've got the infrastructure. We have the process in place. It should be relatively easy to add it. It's one of those where I haven't committed yet, but stay tuned. I think it will be forced on me shortly, but we'll find out. Just keep watching.
All right. Thank you so much again. And I hope to get my Security Plus over with hopefully in a couple of months. It is tough certification. Another thing I have, I read somewhere that next year around this time, DoD folks would not consider Security Plus as much of a certificate. I don't know if you have came across that article or not. If you haven't, I'll gladly send you that link through your contact tab. But it just kind of me going through all these videos kind of had me questioning: do I really want to do this, or go ahead and do something next level as far as certifications go? But I mean, management asked me for it. I'm of course going to do it. But I don't know if you have came across that article or not.
I did. This was an article I saw. It was reposted multiple times on Reddit to the point that the person that was spamming the article everywhere had his article deleted everywhere, because not only was he spamming it across multiple user groups on Reddit, he was also completely wrong in what he was putting. The title of this on Reddit was CompTIA Security Plus won't hold as much weight next year? ? And then linked to an article that described a certification process that the DoD goes through to certify the security of their own systems, their hardware and their software. So the article was about how does the DoD qualify the security of their own equipment and software. It had nothing to do with how individuals are certified with security knowledge in the industry. So it was, if there was ever a definition of fake news, that was definitely a fake out of news. It had nothing to do with industry certifications. It had nothing to do with security certifications in the industry. It was simply an internal checklist that the DoD was putting together to say, if we use Windows, is Windows secure, and how can we make sure it's secure? Oh, it has these things inside of it that make sure it's secure. It's a checklist. It was all about vendor certifications and making sure their software and hardware were certified. Had nothing to do with your certification as an IT professional, thankfully. So hopefully we can put that one to rest.
All right. Yeah. So it did have me freaked out, honestly. And that was the main reason I wanted to reach out and, confirm that everything was good. So again, one last time, I appreciate what you do. I'm going to continue with Security Plus and then go back and get my Network Plus. And hopefully that will get me enough to be, go after those DoD jobs out there. And have a great day, sir.
I appreciate it. Congratulations and best of luck with your Security Plus. That's always a challenge. The DoD, by the way, has a ton of certifications that this equipment has to go through. There are, for instance, a company that makes, or let's take Cisco. Cisco has routers, they have switches. There are certain things those routers and switches have to be able to handle for the Department of Defense to be able to purchase them. So the DoD has certain certifications that they go through to make sure that if that particular switch or router is near where a bomb goes off, that it can handle the vibrations. These are things we don't often have to worry about in the insurance industry. Normally, if you're working in retail, you don't have to worry about the explosions near your routers and switches. But the Department of Defense has some very specific requirements, so they certify that this equipment can do this. That's what that article was referring to. So I'm glad some people were seeing, whoa, wait a second, Security Plus is about, no, it has nothing to do with Security Plus. Security Plus maintains and has the same weight and the same value as with the Department of Defense as it will for the foreseeable future. It's an important certification for the DoD. Let's go back to the calls. Let's go to Atlanta. Hello, caller. Thanks for calling. What's your name? What can we do for you? Caller in Atlanta. Hello, caller. Are you on mute? Am I on mute? I am not on mute. So are you there, caller? He's not there.
Can you hear me now?
There he is. Hey, caller. Thanks.
Hello?
I held in
All
there.
right.
I was there. I waited. We got you on the phone. What can we do for you?
All right. From England, Florida, I have a friend who just recently got his A+, and it made me believe I could do mine. He keeps mentioning labs, look for labs online, try to do labs. Do you have any recommendations for free versions of that?
There's not a lot free from a lab perspective, unfortunately. It's one of those things that is it's a very involved ecosystem of things that you have to have available to do labs. There have been labs that others have offered, I've noticed, that are and there used to be some available that I could offer through GTS Learning, where they were online in the cloud, where you connect to the cloud, and there were some predefined labs that were there that you could step through. Those, unfortunately, GTS Learning was purchased by CompTIA almost 2 years ago now, coming up on 2 years, and so they no longer offer that. There are some labs that I've seen offered through publishers. I've seen this on Amazon, where there's labs. It's kind of in a virtual environment to be able to work through it. But there's not really been anything free that I've seen online. I've considered writing some labs myself, but that would require that people have a certain operating system or certain hardware in front of them, and it becomes difficult to have this to be something that everybody could use or take advantage of. So I've just not written anything like that. I think Q&A for me is probably the next step of things I create, and then maybe after that, work with some labs. I just haven't seen anything, definitely nothing for free. Everything I've seen has been commercialized, but the ones that I have seen that are commercial products tend to be pretty good.
All right. Thank you, sir, and keep on listening to your videos because I'm getting close.
Sounds good.
Hopefully within the next month or so.
Good for you. Best of luck. Let us know how it goes.
Yes, sir.
That's fantastic. One of the things, and I mentioned hands-on is so important, that is sort of a missing link, I'm afraid, in the industry, is we don't have a lot of good options for labs. I'm telling you, go do hands-on, and then not giving you many options for doing hands-on. You almost have to come up with the labs yourself. Is sit down at your Windows front end and then start going through all of those different commands. Maybe step through the commands yourself. Run through NBTstat, run through netstat, run through NSLOOKUP, run through the ping, the trace route, and do some of these things yourself. But the problem is that you're getting a response to these. You're typing these things in and seeing the results, but it's kind of hard to understand exactly what you're seeing. Hopefully my videos can help a little bit with that. But I would love to find some more accessible labs in the industry to be able to do that. It's kind of tough to do that. Fortunately, for those of you that want to do labs, I will, as I often do, point you to modern.ie, modern.ie. Modern.ie is a Microsoft website. It will redirect you to the Microsoft developer site. Modern.ie is a website that has lab or offline, non-production virtual machines under the Tools pull-down menu. There's a link for virtual machines. And that virtual machines link allows you to download Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10, which, by the way, are all operating systems you need to know for your A+ certification. These are all VMs available from Microsoft to download for free. You don't even have to register. You just say, I'd like Windows 10, and I would like it on VirtualBox, on Vagrant, on VMware, on Hyper-V, or on Parallels. And then you can choose which platform you like to use. This is modern.ie, like the modern man, like the thoroughly modern Millie. There's another esoteric reference for those of you listening. Thank you, chat room. Thank you, Muhammad, in the chat room, for putting modern.ie in there. And of course, thankfully, you'll be able to see this on the replay with the chat as it's going by and listening to my weird references for modern. I am the modern man. Again, a few of us will catch it. Others maybe not, but it makes me happy. And that's really the important part, isn't it? Modern.ie. It's great to have these VMs here. You don't buy Windows for your A+. Go to modern.ie, go to the Tools pull-down menu, choose virtual machines. They're free. And as long as I've read through the end user license agreement, you can download these and absolutely use them for the A+ certification. You cannot use these for production purposes. They cannot be your desktop. You are not doing something production with them. They are for lab use only. And I think they expire in like 90 days. So you download them, you got 90 days. and you'll be able to figure out all of the details. Yes, so at least a few people in the chat room get the reference. Thank you. I'm not the only one. This is what me and Mrs. Professor Messer do, is throw weird references at each other to see exactly what we're going to do, how this works out for all of us. Sometimes it works out, sometimes not so much with this. Well, I have plenty of things to do on my side with figuring out why my system went black. I've got to now troubleshoot that and deal with those. It never ends to be able to have this here. The one thing I will tell you is that we do one of these study groups at least once a month. This was the 1001 for this month, but come back on Thursday. I have the 1002 study group. I've already written the questions. I've already got everything ready to go. I'm going to kind of switch it around in the next day or so online. I like that the chat room worked great for us this time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for participating in the chat. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for the answers for that first hour and for being here. We really could not do this without you. I'm very grateful for your participation and for your comments and for your jokes and for just having fun with us on these study groups. We really love doing them, and we love that you're here with us as well. Come back Thursday. We'll do the 220.1002 A+ study group then, and you'll be able to join us with even more Q&A and come back and ask your questions as well. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ study group.